Greetings, groovy people! Welcome to this week's video. I'm the self-proclaimed Blue Dragon, and we're back in the USSO! What? First off, happy US Independence Day for anyone out there who celebrates that. Now let's talk about secession! Hey! Not that secession. Ooh, that's not gonna touch that. Oh, by the way, did you know Lincoln was offered the chance to govern the Oregon Territory? Thank goodness he declined, but they did send Mary Ann Lincoln, not Todd Lincoln. Her maiden name was Todd, not her middle name. They sent her some seashells for her collection. I used to work at the Lincoln home, so I'm a Lincoln nerd. I will always be a Lincoln homie. Anyway, before I get into this, I have to do some corrections and surprise, surprise, apologies. I've been pronouncing quote-unquote Zhu Fang wrong, of course. I wish I'd looked this up before doing those videos, because, yeah, I sound like an idiot. But it's actually pronounced Shui Feng, so that is her name, Shui Feng. But I did correct it in the scrolling text in Friday's video, which that brings me to my second thing. Apologies. I was in a hurry because I never do 2 videos in a week, and my video editor kept lagging, and it looked like the text was lining up to what I was actually saying, but I couldn't tell because the video wasn't loading. Like, I had to do it in several sessions, so that part of the video wasn't loading, and I was in a hurry because it was already later than 6 p.m. when I uploaded it anyhow. I usually triple proof the text now, but that's what happens when I don't do any editing at all, when I don't edit myself at all. So I already have mistakes anyway, but yeah, when I do no editing, it looks terrible. So I had to apologize for that. The David Bowie comment was talking about how he also had like the different personas on stage, and then the normalizing comment was supposed to qualify when I said Shui Feng wanted and Nikki wanted to normalize their quote-unquote alternative lifestyle by today's standards. I didn't mean that it was abnormal. What I was trying to say is normalize it for the culture as they rebuild. So those were my qualifiers and comments, and they didn't line up at all with what I was saying, so I apologize for that. So anyway, on to the discussion. What the heck? USSO? What am I talking about? This video is about Dark Horse for those of you just joining in. That's the webcomic that I work on, links in the description. It doesn't matter what site you are reading from, whether it's Comic Theory or you're doing the revamp where I'm trying to make things clearer. I go into what exactly has happened in the future. So in 2000, basically this fanatic genetic terrorist group or cult, actually it's really more of a cult, it's an international group, and they have basically set free a main virus and a couple other viruses that they have worked on genetically to kind of set, their idea is to have humanity evolve by setting things back to 0 hour and basically killing off most of the people. They call themselves G.I.F.T, that stands for Genetically Engineered International Federation Tribunal, and genetically engineered is hyphenated, so that's how they get away with the G.I.F.T. But because they're crazy, nobody wants to call them G.I.F.T, so the United States, and I'm not sure what they would be called abroad because I'm not really dealing with the rest of the world, but they call them the faction. So I use those terms interchangeably, but what ensues is pretty much mass hysteria, because combined with the release of the viruses, which the main virus they release is similar to the H1N1, the swine flu. I had to read a book. This is kind of inspired, in addition to like The Stand and Postman, the film. I think it was a book too. I need to read the book, but these kind of things influenced a little bit of the story. But Gina, Kolata, she wrote this book called The Swine Flu of 1918. I'll put a link for that. And basically she goes into the history of like the H1N1. She doesn't really come to a conclusion 100% in that book, but it was still very fascinating to like find out that apparently, and I had no idea before college that this had happened, but this swine flu had like swept through several nations. I mean, it was in China, it was in Spain, it was in several countries around the world. And so millions of people, I think she said 40 million people died like virtually overnight. So that's kind of the idea behind this, only they released a couple viruses, but again, the main one that they had been cultivating was the 1-1. And by the end of it all, I mean, that combined with their coordinated terrorist attacks, both, fighting on foot and coordinating bombings. Again, remember, this is pre-9/11, it's taking place in 2000. They pretty much decimate the population, at least of the US, and what follows is the population is so drastically reduced that the government the US government pretty much falls apart. There's very few people remaining who are in office, and certainly the presidential chain of command is gone. So who's left? They've basically declared martial law, and the war is kind of not even really finished when Kanna heals the world. I mean, there's still a few remaining members of the faction. Again, they use the faction because they, Word of Wednesday, don't want to placate the terrorist organization by calling them G.I.F.T, which is what they would prefer. But, I mean, the war is still kind of going on, but the population's so drastically reduced that there are really only small skirmishes kind of going on by the time we're seeing the future in Dark Horse, at least in the first flashback that Odysseus has. And that's all before Keisuma is even able to take over Kanna. What's happened is people who's left, they're very desperate. They're extremely displeased with how the US handled the war. I mean, you can't really blame them, but because it was something that they weren't prepared for. But at the same time, people are so dissatisfied, and as word starts getting around where this healing power or this healing light came from, people start pilgrimaging to the West Coast. And there are people who are recognizing that a lot of these folks coming out there are almost biblically looking to Kanna to fix their problems and to heal not just their physical being but their spiritual well-being. And there are people who have survived from the government out there that see this as an opportunity to seize control, and they convince, and I would even say manipulate, Kanna to agree to be the figurehead queen of a newly formed government. They secede from the United States with no fighting at all, because the government has been so crippled that they really can't do anything, and even a lot of their populations, as far as the East Coast, most of them are traveling out west. So there's no argument about it at all, government-wise. And the states that form this United Sovereign States of Oregon, that's what the USSO stands for. It's Washington State, Oregon, and then parts of Northern California from San Francisco on north. The southern part of California is still kind of debating on it, but at this point, those are the 3 states that have formed this country. And what we're getting into with the Act 3 revamp, which is, this is a page that I'm looking, maybe I should have stated that at the beginning. This is a page from Act 3. This is this week's page that I'm working on here. What we're getting at is we're going to see more of Kanna and how the government is working, and she has absolutely no power at all, even though it is her people are flocking to and seeking guidance from. She is still a teenager, and she's being manipulated by some people within the government that have their own agenda, and she's very dissatisfied with her situation, in addition to dealing with the loss of her family, all the dead that are everywhere. She's so focused on reconstruction and repopulation that's her main priority right now, that she has no time to take care of her own mental health and her own state of well-being, which are factors that's going to contribute to why it's not, I wouldn't say easy, but why she's able to be taken over by Keisuma, in spite of the fact that she and Rhina already know that Keisuma exists and is trying to take over Kanna. Odysseus relays what happens to Kanna, but you'll see why things still unfold the way they do. So there's reasons why, even though they're, they lived through the future and then went back to where they, belong so they could do the normal timeline. But there's a reason why, in spite of all their knowledge, Kanna still gets possessed. And we're going to kind of get into that with the Act 3 revamp. And Act 4, I'm actually having to add some acts. So yeah, that's all I have for this week. Thank you for listening in. Please stop by next Wednesday for an art with me video. I haven't done one of those in a while, but it's gonna rock. Bad joke. You're gonna see what I'm talking about next week. Question of the week, do you like fireworks shows? If you want a copy of Dark Horse Act 1, send me an email. I'll give you all the details. Like, subscribe, do the bell thing. And last announcement, Ringo Starr's birthday is Sunday, folks, July 7th. So say peace and love at noon. It's something that he tries to coordinate every year to kind of promote peace and love. So very well, and keep on trucking.